Far left are certainly trying to recruit school students across the country. South Australian students are being encouraged next week to skip school and join a protest against Pauline Hanson. The protest is called Students Say No to Hanson. It's going to be staged outside Parliament House during school hours. And as I said, students are being invited to join it. Now, the protest is backed by several groups, all from the far left, including the Socialist Alternative and the Adelaide High School Anti-Capitalists Association. Similar protests are being put on around the country in Sydney, Brisbane, Canberra, Melbourne, etc. I had a couple of problems with this, aside from the obvious that kids should be at school. I mean, they can't even vote, so why they're protesting against a political candidate, I'm not really sure. But the involvement of explicitly left-wing socialist groups says to me this is more than just a spontaneous protest against Pauline Hanson because she might have said some things about Asians that people misinterpreted a decade or more ago. This rather is part of a broader political agenda to try to sway young people towards a far-left ideology. The other thing I take exception to is the South Australian Education Minister, Lucy Hood, who was asked whether or not it was appropriate for children to attend a protest against Pauline Hanson during class hours. Here's what she told the Adelaide Advertiser. She said, "School is the best place for a child to be during the school week, but really, that's a matter for an individual parent to decide if that is the best place for their child to be." Now, I would have thought the Education Minister would say unequivocally, during school hours, kids are at school. Well, you know, maybe parents think it would be better for them to be at a protest against Pauline Hanson. Absolute rubbish. The Education Minister should say without any equivocation, kids should be in school. But one more point about her saying, well, it really is a matter for parents. This is a state, as many Australian states are, where if a child decides to identify as the opposite gender, schools now are given the power to keep that secret from parents if they deem that would be a better way to go. So if your child changes gender, then the school reserves the right to say, well, maybe we shouldn't tell parents about this. But if your kid wants to skip school to protest Pauline Hanson, the Education Minister says, well, this is really a matter for parents to decide. I don't want to intervene in that. Can you see the contradiction there?
Yeah, it's complete hypocrisy, isn't it? I'd really despair for the next generation because clearly they are utterly brainwashed. It's not the first time we've seen this brainwashing. Do you remember a couple of years ago there was that strike for climate change where all the high school students were encouraged to skip school to go out in the streets because of the climate Armageddon? And I remember seeing the vision at the time going, what on earth is happening? Because you had kids crying. They were crying on air. Are they going to be crying at this event? I mean, this is just ridiculous. Look, God help us if we were to ever lower the voting age, because these are the types of people that would be voting. The reality is that high school kids do not have the life experience. They don't have the understanding of the issues in the country, and they don't have the understanding of the political system to be able to go out and explain what they are protesting for. I would actually love to know why these kids are taking part. What part of Pauline Hanson's strategy do they not like? Or have they just heard from mum and dad, or she's racist, she's a bigot, so that's why. But they don't understand the migration issues in this country. They don't understand the threat of radical Islam. There are so many policies that are actually underpinning Pauline Hanson right now. I don't think any of these kids have any clue. And the other point I'd make, it's been run by the Socialist Alternative branches. Terrific. We are already seeing the rise of socialism across America. And here we're going to have little socialists running around too, little Mamdanis. I mean, it's a concern. It really is.
I'll make the point that this shouldn't happen in school hours. But I do take objection to the idea that young people should have no involvement in politics or shouldn't take an interest in politics.
I never said they shouldn't have an interest.
Well, you said they know nothing.
I said that I don't think they have the understanding of the political system in a high school age, and I stand by that. I didn't say that they know nothing.
OK. Well, I had my first weekly column in a newspaper at 16 years of age.
But you also put up a grade because you were highly intelligent and engaged in political affairs, so I think you are very different to the average. Sorry, but you are.
Well, sure, but there may be people within that crowd with whom I disagree that are of above average intelligence who understand politics. Again, it shouldn't happen in school hours, but I'm not sure you can, with broad brushstrokes, say that every person in that crowd is an idiot. I never
said everyone in that crowd was an idiot.
And hasn't made up their own mind. Well, you said, are they getting it from mum and dad?
I think so. I reckon that they probably are.
All of them. Every single one of them.
I never said all of them, Caleb, but I do think that they probably are. They're listening to mum and dad going, Pauline's this, Pauline's that, and then they make up their own political views. I'm not saying that they're all unengaged with politics, but not everybody is a young Caleb Bond who was on television at the age of 5 years old.
I think he was 6 years old.
He was 6 years old,
just
you
to
know.
be clear. And he did have a column when he was how old?
16.
Yeah, but that doesn't mean it was any good.
Well, I don't know. They kept publishing it. People kept reading it. I assume there's something in that.
To Danika's point, I mean, she mentioned the climate protests that school kids went to, and they cried because the planet is burning. I mean, that was pretty good evidence that most of the young people who attended these protests were completely uninformed about the issues. And I'm with Danica. I'd be shocked if many of these young people understand Pauline Hanson's policy on immigration, or the context in which she made comments about good Muslims, or indeed what she was referring to when she talked about the danger of Asians swamping the country back in, when was that, the 90s?
Yeah, the 90s.
I'd be shocked if any of these kids could give a reasonable explanation or contextual discussion on those things.
We may find out at 1 p.m. on August the 13th. I don't
think we should go and talk to these kids.
Yes,
would we be allowed to interview these? We probably wouldn't be allowed.
Oh, why not? I mean, they're in a public place. They want to show up and have a chat. Presumably they're there with parental permission because, of course, the Education Minister says that is the reason that they will be there in South Australia. So they may well be up for a chat. Though I would say, you might remember Paul Keating went along to a university, I think it was the University of Adelaide, back in the 90s, and they protested him, and he had a very direct message for the students. Indeed, and I think most protesters would be well served by that. In fact, one of the protesters who was yelling at him there and that he told to go and get a job was a woman by the name of Tammy Franks, who later went on to become an upper house MP for the Greens in South Australia. So she did get a job.
On the 13th of August, thousands of high school and university students across Sydney, Melbourne, Brisbane, Adelaide, Perth, Canberra and beyond walked straight out of class under the banner "Students Say No to Hanson." Sounds spontaneous, right? A grassroots eruption of youthful conscience? Except pull back the curtain and you find the National Union of Students running the show, fronted by an education officer who is also, quite openly, a member of Socialist Alternative. That is not a conspiracy theory, that is the byline on her own campaign article.
Now, nobody is saying teenagers cannot care about politics. Caring is healthy. Caring is frankly the entire point of civics. But there is a difference between a student independently forming a view and a student being handed a placard, a chant and a bus timetable by an organised political network. One is democratic participation, the other is recruitment wearing a backpack. And here is where the plot thickens deliciously. The Federal Education Minister publicly urged students to save the protesting for weekends and stay in the classroom during school hours. Fair enough, reasonable, even boring in its reasonableness. But then, in the same breath practically, other officials shrugged and said it was really just a matter for individual parents to decide. Hold on, just a moment. These are the very same education systems that in other contexts will keep sensitive information from parents entirely, no permission slip required. So which is it? Are parents the ultimate authority, or are they not? You cannot have it both ways depending on which headline suits the week.
Here is the real issue, though, and it has nothing to do with left or right. It is political literacy. A 15-year-old chanting a slogan about a senator's decades-old comments without ever unpacking the history, the policy detail, or the actual consequences is not engaging in democracy. They are photocopying somebody else's opinion. Real civic education means teaching young people to question everything, including the very movements trying to recruit them.
So no, the answer is not banning teenagers from caring about their country. The answer is arming them with the thinking skills to ask, Hold on, who organised this? Why? And what happens after the placards go in the bin? Passion without literacy is just noise with better lighting. Thanks so much for watching. We really appreciate you being here.